Hello. Today I'm going to speak to you about GPS. GPSs, we rely on them, we need them for these trips, and there's some basic things which I want to go through just as a reminder, an aid memoir to help us all on the trip. A lot of you will be completely familiar with this. I'm just going over old grounds, but I thought it worthwhile mentioning to make sure we're all singing from the same hymn book, so to speak. I've made a list of basic settings, and I'm primarily speaking about the good old BMW badged Garmin Nav 5. Most of these things apply to Nav 6, but the settings, they really, one way or the other, will be in all your GPSs. So, firstly, a little list up here. Calculation mode, fastest route. Now you've got shortest route, fastest route, curvy roads, and maybe some other routes as well, but we'll keep the fastest routes. Curvy roads are great. I sometimes use it if I've got plenty of time, and it takes you away up and down and everywhere around, and I discover new routes sometimes. But you've got to have plenty of time to do this, and we don't have that additional time on these trips. Most of our days are 6 hours in the saddle, and we can't afford to do much more. And they're based on the fastest route when we do the calculations on to create routes in the first place. Okay, I've got off-road calculation automatic. Now that means that if I make a wrong turning, or I might turn left up there instead of carrying straight on, I'll automatically be put back onto the route. Now, it may mean that I don't go back onto that same road, to be honest, because that road may go onto somewhere else. The GPS is going to recalculate and take me on the fastest route to get to my destination, and the destination on these trips is either a coffee stop, a lunch stop, another coffee stop, or a hotel. That's how we tend to work these trips. Then avoidances. Now there are quite a few in this. My main ones, I avoid traffic, car share lanes, unpaved roads. Now, variable ones, as far as I'm concerned, I can have motorways on or off. I also have U-turns, which is not a variable, and in my case, a U-turn are not set as an avoidance. Now, what that means is that if I take that left turn, and the GPS thinks, well, look, it's better if he goes back and goes onto the road he was on beforehand, then it'll say make a U-turn, make a U-turn. But perhaps I wanted to take that, and because I know I want to avoid somewhere, or I want to go and see a lake or something, I'll just let that make a U-turn, carry on, until it decides that the distance to the next waypoint is shorter, having carried on that incorrect road and doubling back, and then the make a U-turn will disappear. The advantage in my mind of not making this an avoidance is that if you have avoided making U-turns on, and you're going around, say you're going around a big lake, or the Gorge de Verdon, in our example, as a good example, what will happen is you make this wrong turn, and it's not going to tell you to make a U-turn, it's going to try and recalculate fastest routes, but there aren't many roads along there. You may go 20 miles out of your way before it manages to get back on track. Whereas, in my make a U-turn, you get this annoying thing, make a U-turn, make a U-turn, make a U-turn, and you can always look at the distance to go on your screen to the next waypoint. If that's going to increase, something's wrong. You look at a map. You make the decision rather than the GPS makes the decision, and that's, in my mind, the better way to run things. Because it's all very well we rely on these GPSs. You've got to, these are just tools. We're in the countryside. There are maps there. It's much bigger than the GPS. We've got to work this ourselves. The next one, tolls and fees. I've got this right now. My setting is avoid. But in France, I play with this quite a lot because the autoroutes are toll roads. And in France, you can use these toll roads to your advantage without paying as such. So often I have toll roads off, motorways on. So I can go down a motorway that isn't a toll road. The advantage again in France here is that in most cases this allows you to bypass a city very quickly. Grenoble, for example, on our Magellan trip to Corsica, Sardinia, France, Corsica, Sardinia, and because Grenoble is only about an hour that way from me, I bypass Grenoble often. If I had motorways off, I would be forced to go through Grenoble, which is about a 7-mile long city but in the mountains, and you'd be in and out, back and forth across the river and in Fontaine, Grenoble. It would be awful. So you have motorways on, toll roads off, and you go sailing down the motorway, bypass it, then it warns you to go off, because if you don't go off, you need to be paying. And it just works a treat. So on our Magellan trip, I will be going through that a little bit more. The other thing, because again, speaking about the good old Garmin BMW Nav 5 and probably Nav 6, these things have foibles. I don't think this applies to Zulu, the Garmin Zulu, and it certainly doesn't apply to the newer XT, and TomToms. This doesn't affect them at all. But the best way I can describe how these things work with routes, and I'm talking about routes here as opposed to just going an A to B, is that when you save your route with Magellan, they send you the route files through, I'll send you route files through, and what happens is it's saved in the background memory, it's saved on the SD card or an internal memory. That's fine, it hasn't been loaded yet. And you then have to load your route for the day, or if you chose to, you could load all 16 routes or 20 routes all in one go. That's something I never do. The reason I never do it is this device, the way it works is that whatever settings I have when I load the routes just flow through. And if I have motorways off, for example, and I change it to motorways on, it makes not a jot of difference. It will be motorways off, and I'll carry on off motorways. What I do is I load the route for the day of the settings I want each day, and that just works a treat. If I've got to change from motorways on to motorways off during the day, remember I'm speaking about routes, not just an A to B thing here, then I would cancel the route, I would make my changes on the settings, and I would reload the route, and that works. The TomTom, it works a treat. You can make a change motorways on, motorways off during the day. It works absolutely fine. You can load all your routes in advance from the TomTom, and I am almost sure that you can do the same with most of the modern Zulus and the Garmin XT. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that that's the case. One thing with the TomTom is that for TomTom users there, the biggest problem we find on tours with people using the TomTom is they don't start their TomTom when they leave. It sounds a bit silly, this, but you've got to start your TomTom, start or run, or whatever it's called, or start rise. And because more often than not the hotel or the camping ground or your start point is the first point, the TomTom and the Garmin would want to go there. The Garmin prompts you that your first point is going to be your coffee stop. The TomTom doesn't. And the TomTom, if you start the route 5 miles down the road, it's going to turn round and take you back to the start, and you can be with 4 other guys on their bikes, and your TomTom for the whole day is going to be saying, making you turn, to try and take you back. You follow the guys to the coffee stop, and still trying to go back to the hotel. So TomTom users start the thing, start ride, whatever the button's called, when you go, and it'll work fine. Right, those are the basics. Now, one other thing I want to show you, I put a route into this, it just goes to the BMW dealer, and I want to show it to you. So on my screen I've got these buttons set up. I arrive in 40 kilometres, the via distance is 40 kilometres, down to is 46, and speed 0. I quite like this set up on my screen. I can customise these, by pressing this I can change to something else. and all 4 of them I can do this. Different devices allow you to do different things. You have some devices you haven't got all these options. But one thing we're all going to have on this trip is we're going to need to stop for petrol. And what I do is, rather than just go back here, where to petrol station, and it finds the nearest petrol station, because it's searching near where I am. Sandhurst 2626 is Drome, which is the department that I live in. It's a county. And what this does, searching near, it's every petrol station here is an expanding radius of my location at the moment. So this could be north, south, east, west of where I am, which isn't really handy in some cases. But by pressing here, I can change this to, in most cases, we want my active route. It's my destination where I am now, which is what I am, or whatever. So my active route, and that's searching again, and now it tells me distance-wise where these petrol stations are. And these are on my route, so it makes a lot more sense. You know, I know how far maybe I can go for 30 kilometres. I know 21 kilometres at this, wherever this is, that I can get fuel. This is all going the route I'm going. So that's a very, it's an easy tip, and it's very easy. It's search near and my active route. TomTom does this, Garmin does this, other devices possibly do that as well. Little tip, I'll go through these things again, and I've got a little document, I'll send out some screen dumps. So I hope that's helped, and speak soon.